And to me, I think that's been like the big aha as we talk to publishers around digital transformation and how you make digital a more core piece of your business. It's about taking your audience and then helping your advertisers stay in front of those people everywhere they go across the web, which is that demand side of programmatic.
Welcome to the Local News Matters podcast, where we explore pathways to stronger journalism, better businesses, and healthier communities. I'm Tim Regan-Porter, CEO of the Colorado Press Association. And in each episode, I sit down with guests from newsrooms and others in the local news ecosystem to highlight the innovative work of local newsrooms and those that support them, as well as the crucial questions they face. This episode, I'm excited to welcome Charity Huff, CEO of January Spring and managing partner at Maroon Ventures. Charity has spent well over 2 decades helping media companies and startups grow revenue primarily in digital advertising. We discuss why the pivot to reader revenue is good, but not enough. Most newsrooms need digital ad strategies and better digital ad strategies. We provide a bit of a 101 on digital advertising, discuss various issues in the space, and highlight a new digital ad product that we have launched at the Colorado Press Association that newsrooms and other associations may want to adapt themselves. You can support the work we're doing on the Local News Matters podcast by doing something that will literally take you 5 seconds to do. In whatever podcast player you use, simply click follow. If you have a few more seconds, click 5 stars in Apple Podcasts. It helps people discover the podcast and is all that we ask in exchange for all of the work that goes into it. And now, I'm pleased to bring you Charity Huff. So welcome, Charity.
Hello, great to see you.
Real quick, just give us a little bit of your background.
Sure, I'd be happy to. 25 years in digital local media. I was fortunate to come out of undergrad the same year Google was invented. So I literally have been in this digital space my entire career. I've spent time in Yellow Pages, spent a lot of time in newspaper, as well as more on the digital-only side of our business, and have worked with everything from small, super niche magazine publishers to big Fortune 500, big media companies.
And you work with newspapers across the country. You work with some of our members. You work with some other press associations.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. In my current capacity as CEO of January Spring, we work with 160 publishers all over North America of all varying sizes.
And what is January Spring?
Yeah, January Spring is a digital ad agency that works exclusively with publishers to help them take digital to market. Everybody's in the midst of a digital transformation, and everybody's kind of going at their own pace. And so January Spring comes in and helps make sure that you've got the right toolbox to be successful in that transformation.
And you've been working with the Colorado Press Association, and we have a new product that we'll talk about in a minute. It's actually, believe it or not, I think something unique in the digital advertising space. And we rolled it out just a month or so ago, and we'll see what kind of traction it gets, but I'm excited to talk about that. But let's step back for a minute and just kind of lay the groundwork. The industry has been moving to an increasing focus on reader revenue. Advertising revenue generated 80 to 90% of the industry's revenue historically, and that started to change when Google started and Craig Newmark took the classifieds away with Craigslist. That was going to happen eventually, so no offense to Craig. But the industry's been struggling for the past 20 years to figure out how to make up for some of that lost revenue. And I think the reader revenue push is good. I think it leads to better journalism. It's not without its downsides in terms of equity and reach. But advertising is still an important part of the mix. It should be an important part of the mix, I believe. Not only is there money on the table, particularly in local communities, local advertising, it's something readers value. They want to know what restaurants are open, what offers there are, what businesses are hiring, all the sort of things that you look to advertising for. And so I think it's important to have a smart revenue strategy that includes advertising for most news outlets. And I want to acknowledge up front that digital advertising can be a little creepy. You and I think we were on a call, I think it was end of last year, with a company that specializes in super niche targeting down to the household level, combining credit card data with all the cookie data. It can really freak people out. So I just want to acknowledge that up front. at the same time, there's some value. Personally, I like ads that are targeted to me. There's nothing worse than sitting through a Hulu mandatory commercial for something I could care less about. So there are privacy trade-offs, but there's also some benefits.
Agreed. Advertising is part of the media ecosystem. Consumers understand that, and they would prefer to have ads that are relevant to them. And we continue to see, as we watch what's happening in media consumption, is that media consumers are continuing to get more niche and really be hyper-targeted on what's important to them and what's of interest to them. And that's what advertisers want as well. So it does make sense that this then becomes one of those where you're like, wow, I'm seeing these ads because those are interesting to me, as opposed to what my next door neighbor is seeing because she has different interests than I do.
And I want to talk a little bit about trends that we're seeing in advertising, digital advertising, but advertising more generally. Before we do that, let's get some terminology out of the way. So people who don't know OTT from DSPs, let's explain a little bit about what those are. So when I first started a magazine, we were setting up our own OpenX ad server. It was all what we call O&O. What is O&O?
Yeah, owned and operated.
So that's what a lot of people, I think, understand advertising to be. So if I see an ad on WashingtonPost.com or any other website, I'm assuming that someone has contacted that publication or that website and said, I want to buy an ad on your website. If that's what's happened, that is O&O.
Correct.
However,
that happens more rarely than it used to.
Exactly, yes. So since the days of me setting up my own OpenX ad server, programmatic has really taken over the market. So what is programmatic?
Yeah, so programmatic is the systematic buying of those ad inventory across a huge network of sites. So let's keep using your Washington Post example. So it used to be, and I'm going to say it used to be like 10 years ago, that the majority of newspapers advertising online and in print was sold by their own sales channel. As programmatic became a thing and we were able to do all of that via systems as opposed to people, it became a great opportunity for newspaper publishers to make a portion of their ad inventory available out on the ad networks via the ad exchanges, via programmatic advertising. That's all of those terms are used somewhat interchangeably, but that's really what it is so the Washington Post has determined that they can get a better yield having some mix of their sales team selling their stuff and the programmatic channels purchasing their ad inventory. So that's what programmatic is the ability for companies to go in and place an ad buy via a system in order to buy ad inventory at its very basic.
And that's a great benefit to a lot of companies who are advertising, because now I don't have to contact all these different outlets. I don't even have to make a lot of choices. I can just say, I want these types of users.
Right.
Here's what I'm willing to pay.
Right. Yeah. So within programmatic, it's a two-sided marketplace. So you have the supply side, which are those of us in the newspaper space. Again, we'll keep using the Washington Post as the example. So the Washington Post makes available a portion of their inventory for the demand side to come in and demand that ad inventory. So there's an SSP, which is the supply side, which are media companies of all shapes and sizes. Everything from, shout out to my most favorite food blog, Cookie and Kate, right, to big magazines, niche publications, all of the different types of media companies, right? And then once that inventory is made available, then on the demand side, a DSP, a demand side platform, and there's some really good ones out there. I'll just give you a few as an example. Trade Desk, Simplify, Basis. There's about a half a dozen of really good premier, and then there's others below that. Google is a demand side, right? So then using one of those platforms can come in and demand ad inventory. And when we're doing that, to your point, we're not just saying, I want all Washington Post users. What you're saying is, I want very specific types of consumers who happen to be reading the Washington Post.
Right. Or you can just say, I want these specific type of users wherever they are on the internet.
Exactly. They don't have to just be on the Washington Post. We always say now digital advertising is about the person you're trying to reach and then finding that person everywhere they go across the web.
And this has had a huge impact on the economy. The advertising industry has grown tremendously. The amount of advertising going to news publishers and pretty much most media providers has shrunk because you now have a lot more supply with the internet than you had back in the days of just print and broadcast.
Correct.
So there there's pluses and minuses, but now, a tiny newspaper in Salida can now get advertising that would have been very difficult for the newspaper to get before.
That's right. Yeah. Think of Target, right? Target.com probably has a good reason to reach those folks with their e-commerce platform. Now they get that advertising, whereas before they wouldn't have.
Right. But the CPMs, there's another term, cost per mille.
Cost per thousand. Isn't that so funny?
Yes. It's the Latin.
Because that makes 0 sense.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So for a print, I know back in my magazine days, we would typically get $40 to $60 CPM. A New Yorker would get $90, $100 or plus.
Right.
Web, in the early days, maybe we could get $10, $15, $20, $30. Mm-hmm. Now, what's a good CPM for programmatic?
Yeah. So again, if you're on the supply side, which is what we're talking about here, where I am supplying ad inventory from my local media site, it can be in the $1 to $2, maybe $3 range, but it's significantly lower than the numbers you were just talking about.
Right. Yeah. And so that's part of what's going on in the news industry, right?
Right.
But, there are ways to sell your own inventory at a premium.
Correct.
And there are ways to use programmatic and get more. So as you get into other types of media, you start doing video, advertising, et cetera, then you can raise that CPM.
Yes, indeed. Yep. And so you just need to think about the value of your audience. So coming back to having an audience or a reader first kind of point of view in your overall business strategy, we would say that's what you should also be doing in your advertising, is learning how to package up your audience and your readers in a way that is of value to an advertiser.
In one way that a lot of newspapers that are more than a one-person operation have responded to this challenge is the other flip side of the equation of the two-sided marketplace is that you don't have to just operate on the supply side. You have connections with advertisers. You can help them now sell into Hulu, to outlets nationwide on the web.
Right.
So you can become basically a full-service advertising agency.
Yeah. And to me, I think that's been like the big aha as we talk to publishers around digital transformation and how you make digital a more core piece of your business. It's about taking your audience and then helping your advertisers stay in front of those people everywhere they go across the web, which is that demand side of programmatic. And another term, programmatic, also is an umbrella term. It means all types of ad inventory, display ads, video ads, as well as streaming TV ads, also known as OTT or CTV, which is over-the-top TV and connected TV, as well as audio, right? So podcasts, Spotify, streaming audio music, all of those fall under that giant umbrella called programmatic, which is between 86 and 89% of all digital ad buying today is programmatically placed.
And so that would also include Facebook ads.
Yeah. Yep.
Google search.
There you go. Keep going. Yep. That's exactly right.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the trends we're seeing in the market. And you were showing me some data earlier from Gordon Burrell and Associates. Where is growth and where do we see declines?
Yeah. So the first shocking number that Burrell Associates published the first of the year is that 7 out of 10 advertising dollars will be spent digitally in 2023. So part of the reason I think you invited me here is to say to publishers, please let's have an ad strategy that includes digital, because that is where the majority of the budget is being spent these days.
Right. I mean, that you cannot ignore that. Now, at the same time, you're not going to, if you're a small paper in a small community, you're not going to make up for your print dollars with just your O&O at, even if you get $8, $9, $10, $12 CPMs, that's not going to make it up. So that's why you need to think about how else can you help your advertisers reach these other platforms? What other value can you provide?
That's exactly right. And across the kind of suite of digital products that we see most publishers do best with is newsletters. So again, knowing that you have consumers who are kind of self-selecting to become more niche and more specific in the content they like to reach. And that's what advertisers want, is more niche audiences. So newsletters work very, very well. Everything from here's a snapshot of what's happening in your community this week, to here's what to do this weekend, to here's our top selection for new restaurants, new business, whatever that might be.
And I just want to interrupt you there, because newsletters is something that 2 years ago we did a newsletter accelerator with some members because we knew this was coming. Some of the big chains have done a really good job of growing their newsletter reach and monetizing it with advertising. It's come about really quickly. I remember this was probably 2017. I was in a meeting with an executive at one of the large chains, and she was telling me about this call she had just had with this relatively new company, Where By Us. I don't know if you know them, and they've got a product called Letterhead. And she just couldn't believe there's this startup and they were putting all this effort into email. Email was so antiquated. 6 months later, the whole company was like on this email pivot.
Right. Yeah.
And a stat you were showing me just earlier that kind of shocked me, that validated what I thought was coming, but that newsletters at the top of the
revenue, yeah. Right. That is where there's a lot of near-term growth. And if you look at kind of that digital pie, email takes up a good chunk of it.
Right.
Yeah. And within email, part of the reason, again, is you just have to listen to the market. So this is data from both HubSpot and Constant Contact. So take it with a grain of salt because obviously they're in that industry. But they say 64% of small businesses are using email marketing to reach their customer. So if you can put together the right kind of email program that includes your audience and then helps them to reach your people when they're consuming your really desirable local content, that's a win-win. So to me, that's one of those, it almost becomes table stakes at this point. And then what you can do beyond that is that you can then, this is where it gets pretty crazy, is you can actually remarket to your own newsletter database via Facebook, via programmatic display, via streaming TV, because you already have a relationship with those people. So then instead of just selling a one-off newsletter sponsorship, you then have a whole program where you're saying, just continue to reach our audience everywhere they go.
And that actually, it comes into play when we talk about our new product. There's a very similar idea behind it. So we'll get to that in a minute.
We just keep teasing it.
Yes. Email's great. I mean, not only is it a great advertising opportunity, it's also a great reader revenue opportunity and just a sort of a brand and a way to build a connection with the audience.
Exactly. And you've got those really loyal folks that are looking forward to that Sunday digest or the Friday afternoon, whenever it is that you do well with your program. And I will make just a slight right turn here. Last year, Apple changed some of their policies, their privacy policies, and it's affected people's open rate percentages when it comes to email. So just a quick on this, if somebody opens your newsletter or your email from their iOS Apple phone, Apple is going to let you know that it was opened, whether it actually was or not. So just by them receiving it and trying to view it inside of the Apple platform, they're going to just tell you it was opened. And for Apple, they're saying, well, this is privacy. You don't have a right to know whether somebody opened your email or not. So what we have seen is that people have shifted, and some of your smarter advertisers have started to ask is, what's the click-through rate on those emails? So if somebody's asking you those questions, that's why.
Right. So where else have we seen growth in digital?
Yeah. So the other obvious place is in this programmatic display because of the fact that so many advertisers are buying and placing ads that way. So I know we're going to come back to that. So I'll go to the other pieces. We're still seeing advertisers make good revenue off of run of site from their O&O. So running ads across their site against their owned and operated .com, whatever that might look like. Another one that is trending up, and I'm so happy to see this, is sponsored content. So I know that becomes very controversial. I spoke at the conference last fall on that topic, and I had a lot of crossed arms and skeptical faces from the publishers that were in the room with me that day. But it is something that works perfectly for us and our advertisers and our readers. Readers don't mind sponsored content if it's informative and it's helpful to them. And so we just need to be able to work through that with some of our internal policies, but we're continuing to see that grow as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. We had Ross McDuffie, who was at McClatchy when I was there, worked with him closely, and he's now at Lee and Madison, heads up their operations there. And one of the things he talked to our convention about was if he were starting from scratch, that's what he would focus on, not the full service hang out your shingle that everybody's cut a shingle out for, but sponsored content. This is something that we've been doing for hundreds of years. It's our specialty. And I think, there are concerns. I understand those, but there are ways to address them. One, you clearly label it. Yeah. Two, you have a church and state wall between who's generating the content. So the same people writing about this local company are completely separate. In fact, in most of the companies I know of that are doing this, they use freelancers, they use specialty companies to go write this content.
Exactly.
And, but that's what people look to news media for, is content. And so why are we not leaning into that? Is it really more of a conflict than a banner ad or, any of the other things we do?
Agreed. And so those publishers that have embraced that and have figured out the internal policy and discussions are really doing well with it, which is why we see it trending up across the board. And then the last one that continues to grow is like a generic group of directories. It's not like your old internet yellow pages directories. It's your best of. It is top docs, right? Top real estate agents, faces, all of those types of, again, niche or very specific segmented directories. Advertisers love those and consumers love them because if I want to know who the top docs are in my community, that's a good source for it. And I understand that in some cases they are paid positions and all of that. Consumers understand how that works, but they appreciate the program. Same thing with Best Of. They like to vote for their favorite Mexican restaurant, right? Because it's like a sense of connection with that particular community. So I say that is another overlooked opportunity for a lot of publishers.
Yeah. On the negative side, print newspapers are predicted to decline.
They are.
I don't think that's a shock to those in the industry, despite the fact that our reach is still wide, particularly when you combine in digital, and time spent with print newspapers is steady, unlike a lot of the digital components.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. eMarketer does a good job year over year measuring our time as consumers spent on the internet, if you will. Right now, it's over 8 hours a day. And if you think about that, you're like, oh my God. But we consume it in so many ways because in the morning I get up, I check my Facebook, right? I do those things, and then I check email, then I might watch my local news, right? Then I might read a bit of my local newspaper, then I listen to a podcast, right? Right. So you just kind of keep going throughout your day and you were connected the entire day. And so while that 8 hours has grown, what I think is interesting is that it holds steady that it's around 17, 18 minutes that somebody spends with newspaper, with magazine, with print, and it hasn't changed. So to me, like that just shows how it's embedded into our habit, right? It's part of our daily ritual in a good way.
Yeah. And I remember those print ads much more than I don't even notice the banner ads anymore. But newspapers aren't at the bottom of the stack in terms of declines. That would be...
Yeah. So this year, again, this is Burrell Associates data, local TV is anticipated to decline 18%. And when I say decline 18%, if you look at where advertising spend is happening, that's the one that's seeing the biggest hit.
Yeah, and close industry watchers have been expecting the problems with TV because of cord cutting.
Right.
And in some sense, there's a whole set of issues that TV is going to face, because while they don't have subscribers in the way we think of them, their cable carry fees are basically subscribers,
Right.
and they're getting a double whammy now. But I think that's an opportunity for anybody in the industry who really gets on board with digital, because it's not that people are watching less video. We all
Right.
know that's not true.
That's exactly right.
So OTT.
Right. Video consumption continues to go up. If you look TikTok, right, that's all video. I'm not a proponent of local advertising for TikTok, so we're not going to go down that path. But if you look at where people are consuming social media, YouTube still is number 3, number 4. That's all video content, right? And so you've got that. Now you've got the fact that I can watch my Hulu in front of my TV, in front of my big screen or on my big screen in the morning. And then I can pause a show and during my lunch hour, pick it up on my tablet while I'm sitting at lunch. And then on my way home, I might be actually watching the same show on my mobile phone, right? And so we're hopping device to device, but we're still consuming all of that content. And that's something that's pretty awesome and has changed in the last couple of years now that everybody is cord cutting.
Yeah. And now even Netflix is in the advertising game, and I think Disney or HBO is considering it.
Yeah, for sure. So what's happened, and this has been really fun soap opera stuff to watch, is that there was so much money coming into, let's say, Netflix, for example, all of that venture capital money, right? They just needed to get market share. Now that they have the market share, now their bankers and their owners are saying, now figure out a sustainable model. And what they are figuring out is what we've already known in local media for a long time, is that an advertising model has to be part of that in order to have a sustaining model.
And so part of the opportunity there with streaming TV is to reach readers, as you were saying, across platforms, which is something we are now trying to do with our new product. So we're calling it News Audience Retargeting.
That's correct.
And it rides on top of programmatic. It functions a little like programmatic, but it's not. I was explaining this to one of my peers at another press association. Oh, so it's a PMP.
Right.
Well, what is a PMP and why is this not that?
Okay, so I'm going to giggle as I even say this, within the demand side of programmatic, you can make an invite-only set of audiences, or set of inventory, I should say more clearly, available to an agency. It's called a private marketplace, a PMP. So you can basically say, okay, here is whatever it is, our Western Slope private marketplace. In this, you can only buy ads on these Western Slope sites. That's what a private marketplace is. And you have to be invited in order to place those ad buys. And they are becoming more and more popular with agencies because you have a young media buyer who's just told, go buy the Western Slope, right? And so they don't even know where the Western Slope is, right? So if they can go into Trade Desk or Simplify and just simply find, oh, here is the Western Slope PMP private marketplace, I would like to bid on that inventory. That's what the agencies are doing. Just like we talked about earlier, if you're selling inventory on programmatic, you're getting $1, $2, $3 for it. So now there's no human contact, no nothing, and they're just placing those buys. And you're not getting fairly compensated for the value of that audience. So with the News Audience Retargeting program, we are taking that piece of the transaction and moving it back into the hands of the local newspaper or the local media company. Is that a helpful explanation?
I think so, yeah. By the way, for those who are outside of Colorado, the Western Slope is what we call the western part of the Rockies in Colorado.
That's right.
So if I'm an advertiser, and I think this makes the obvious use case that I hope we can tap into are political candidates and anyone, political advocacy groups, smoke-free kids, tobacco-free kids.
Yeah.
So they often want to reach newspaper readers because newspaper readers are active and engaged and have a very high percentage propensity to vote. Right. So that it's a great audience. But they're in print, they're in digital, they're all over the web, and they also want to reach people online. So prior to this, I could go advertise in, let's say, the Grand Junction Daily Sentinel, in their print product, in their online product, and then I could go to Grand Junction Daily Sentinel or anybody else and buy programmatic. So then I could reach them on Netflix and Hulu, on Politico.com, on WashingtonPost.com, and I could target it to just Colorado readers. Those could be very distinct audiences. What advertisers often find value in is what we call retargeting, which is following someone around. And anybody who's been online knows what this is, and it feels a little creepy.
Cool.
Yes. I was just searching for a washer and dryer, and now I'm seeing washer and dryer ads everywhere, including on TV.
I'm sure.
Also been conspiracy theories where I was talking with my wife about this, and then I saw an ad. Are they bugging my home? What is Amazon Alexa doing to us? I don't think there's any proof that they're spying on us. But
they claim no.
Yes. We're giving them enough data. They don't need to spy on us. Anyway, so that's retargeting, is when it follows you around. And there's a lot of value because even back in the old days of direct marketing and traditional marketing, there was always a rule of thumb. People need to see your advertisement or hear about you X number of times, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times, whatever it was.
Yeah. It used to be the rule of 7. And now it's the rule of 12, 16, 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that shows that digital advertising is harder to break through.
It is.
So you need to see it many more times.
That's correct.
And so you don't want to just reach readers on Netflix and at Politico and at Grand Junction. You want to reach some of the same readers multiple times.
That's right.
And so that's where we came in and said, look, these news readers are valuable in and of themselves, but we tend not to follow them around the web. You could kind of get there with programmatic, but let's just aggregate these news readers around Colorado, and our members do that by putting a pixel on their website and say, look, now if I'm Joe Blow candidate, I can reach them in all the print newspapers. I can reach them on all the newspaper websites, which is where I want to be. And now I can follow them. So they see that ad
everywhere.
They see it in the paper, and then they see it on Hulu, and they're like, oh, I connect the two. And it really raises that awareness.
It does. And it is a very targeted, specific set of news readers, because it is news readers that we know have been to the Grand Junction Sentinel, right? It's news readers that we know read the Durango newspaper, right? And so it's very specific people. And then, like you said, once we pick them up as part of this news audience for retargeting, we're not just serving them a display ad. We can serve them a video ad. We can serve them a TV commercial. We can serve them an audio commercial, wherever they are going. And what we have seen as we do this with other publishers across the country is that when you use your own audience as the core of your advertising program, they tend to engage and perform better than just an audience that you're buying off of a programmatic channel, because they're more qualified. So that is the program as we've structured it. And I am very excited about it because, again, I've seen it work well in other instances.
I am excited about it too, because part of the Colorado Press Association, we have a for-profit called Colorado Press Network, and we sell advertising. And as we move into the digital space, it's hard for us to stand out. Many of our members can relate. But our news audience is something that is distinctive for us. And now we have something unique to bring in. And the hope is that we can take advantage of this growing digital pie and cannibalize some other people's.
Right.
Because think the Bobert Frisch race that got national attention, millions and millions of dollars. Print newspapers got very little. Even TV, which I'm sure got a big healthy chunk, but a lot of that's also going to Facebook and Google and just general web advertising. Now we can start saying, look, we can add some value here and take some of that. And so instead of getting, 4 and 5 figure buy, maybe we can get some 6 figure buys
yes.
or greater.
Indeed. And so back to our terminology, what we're talking about is called first-party data. And it's going to continue to be kind of the creme de la creme of how you do targeting in digital. Because the difference between first-party data, which means it is owned by the media company and you know more about your readers than anybody else does, versus those similar readers or even those same people that are available out on a programmatic DSP. Because as good as DSPs are, the data is always lagging. There's always discrepancies, all of those things. And your data is true, up to date, accurate for what's happening right now in that market.
Right. And I should say, too, that in terms of just this retargeting piece, the first-party data that we have is that they are news readers. Correct. We are not layering in all of the creepy data that you can get with programmatic, which is an upside for privacy, a downside maybe for not being able to.
Right, but it's pure. It's pure data, right? So you can present it as these are engaged news readers in this market. And because the data is refreshed on a regular basis, because people come back to those news sites on a regular basis, it's true, pure data.
Great. And I'm excited about this. This is something that an individual newspaper could do. Of course, we think there's value in aggregating it, something other press associations could do. But it is something distinctive to our industry. And so we hope others will take up the banner and that advertising agencies will be clamoring for it. If they want to get something like this set up, I'm sure they could reach out to me or to January Spring and we'd connect them to you.
Yes.
And you'd be happy to set some people up.
It would be happy to, because back to our mission with January Spring is we want our publishers to make it into a digital transformation and come out on the other side a winner. And the best way that we can help you do that is by making sure that your core assets are your assets, that you're not just selling other people's stuff. You need to have your audience at the core of what you're doing.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to end this discussion. So thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Local News Matters podcast, and thanks to Charity for a great conversation. Check back next episode for my conversation with two tech founders working to help newsrooms, Yeong Ju of Zet and Jake Seaton of Column. A final thanks to our production partners at Pirate Audio. Pirate Audio believes every community deserves great things to listen to, and they are on a mission to help local newsrooms reach their communities via audio. If you're interested in starting a podcast or need production support for an existing one, let me know and I'd be happy to connect you. If you like this episode and what we're doing more generally, please follow in your favorite podcast app, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and tell your friends about us. I appreciate the support. You can find past episodes, full transcripts, and relevant links, and sign up for our newsletter at localnewsmatterspodcast.com or for lazy typists like me at lnmpod.com. You can follow us on most social media channels at LNMPod, and if you have recommendations of others doing interesting and innovative work in local news, let me know through the contact form at the website lnmpod.com.